Welcome into another episode of Behind the Catch Fence. I'm your host, David Hoffman. We're officially at episode 33, and we got another special guest for an interview. But before I begin, I'd like to give a quick shout out to No Copyright Music on YouTube. They're the ones creating the music that I'm playing. It's obviously no copyright music, so it's free. I'd like to thank you guys for that. With me being a broke college student, I'm grateful for you guys. Go subscribe to them, No Copyright Music. Welcome to yet another interview episode. Man, we're really starting to move up through our 30s. Pretty soon we'll be at the Big 4-0, Big 5-0, whatever it may be. But it's been a star-studded March and April, to say the least, with guys like John Force, Richard Petty, Simon Pagino, Elliott Castroneves, Stingray Robb, and just now recently Bobby Allison, just all joining the show. If you haven't listened to those episodes yet, make sure to go check them out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you may be. Today, we have 2018 NASCAR Hall of Fame inductee Ray Evernham joining the show. Evernham helped orchestrate the legendary Jeff Gordon to 3 championships in the 90s as a crew chief. Then Evernham left Hendrick Motorsports to start his own team in 2001, where he brought back Dodge as a manufacturer in creating Evernham Motorsports. His successful endeavors didn't stop there. Evernham, along with 3-time NASCAR champion Tony Stewart, helped form the highly anticipated new racing series, Superstar Racing Experience, or as we like to call it, the SRX. The season opener of that will be introduced in the summertime. Evernham has been a staple on television as well, from countless appearances on ESPN, Speed, Fox, ABC, and NBC's NASCAR coverage. He's also hosted his own car show, Americana, on the Velocity channel. Evernham is a pure car junkie, and his lifelong passion is apparent throughout the entirety of the episode. Now, enough of the chit-chat, let's get right to it. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite snack, could be some cheese curls, chocolate, whatever it may be, and enjoy this episode with Ray Evernham. Hey Ray, can you hear me?
I can. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, sir. I love all the helmets back there.
Oh, sorry. Hey, sorry about that. I was on the phone with Michael Waltrip, and we got rolling along there and lost track of time.
You're perfectly fine, man.
Yeah.
So first off, how are you doing?
Doing great. Wish we had a little bit more time. Wish there could add some hours to the day, but we just can't do that. So we just got to learn how to use them better.
Yeah. You always wish there was at least more than 24 hours, especially with starting the SRX. I'm sure that's been a big, task at hand.
It is. It is. But we knew what we had to do. So now, as I talked about, we got to lay it out efficiently, and I'm really fortunate. Got a great team of people, some of the best people that I've ever worked with doing something like this. So even though I know that we've got a lot of work to do and we're on a short time frame, I'm confident that we're going to do a good job at it.
And I guess just starting off, I like to always ask all my guests this, because mainstream media, there's a lot of questions that get asked a lot of times. So what's a question that you're surprised you haven't been asked before?
Oh, wow. I guess a lot of people talk about, but they don't ask, why do I personally want to do a project like that? Or this, why it's important to me. And so since I asked that question, I might as well answer it. But, I've always felt that motorsports fans, ever since I was, a child going to the local modified races with my uncle, it's really about the personalities and how that seeing some of these local heroes and had an effect on my life and really drew me in as a fan. And I felt like we've missed some of that as the cars have gotten more about technology and computers and things. And I hate to see the human element of our sport go out. So being that I have experience in the old IROC series, I saw some of that then. I thought it's important to connect again for racing. If we're going to bring in new and younger fans, like it's great to see, like you're a young guy, right? So somebody who has passion to do this. And I think in order to do that, you really got to connect with the person, not with the machine. So thought that this would be a great way of having a great race, but really digging down into the personalities and getting people interested about the drivers. And, those guys were larger than life to me when I was growing up. They were the John Waynes, they were the gunfighters. They were and many of them were good role models, and they gave me an understanding about commitment. And not all their stories were great, right? Some of them had to come back from tragedy or from injury or had something, and I want to know those stories. So I want to get back to being able to show people about the racing and the race car and the speed and all those things, but also, more importantly, who are those heroes, and what was their path like?
And you mentioned just with going to local tracks as growing up and that kind of thing. Where did your love for racing initially begin?
Honestly, I can't tell you that because I don't know. I know that I have always loved cars, all the way back to I had a little go-kart. I ran until it was one little plastic Marxa cart thing they used to call them. Like they're probably it's probably in the vintage antique toy market now. But I wore the wheels right off of it, and I was lucky enough that the man that my dad worked for, his name was Jack Stoddard, had a Texaco station in Homedale, New Jersey, and he loved Indy cars and midgets, so they took me to see the midgets at places like Old Bridge Stadium in New Jersey and Wall Stadium. And then my uncle Nick was a big dirt modified fan, and he used to go to places like East Windsor and Hightstown, New Jersey, and Flemington, New Jersey, Reading, Pennsylvania. And he just started taking me with him a lot. And I just, while the other kids were very interested in baseball and football and lots of other things, I was trying to spend my weekends, either watching. At that time, you could watch bits and pieces of races on Wide World Sports, or going to the races with my uncle.
And just as you're growing up through just racing and getting that experience in just various areas, what would you say would be your big break per se that really surged your career forward?
Without a doubt, it was the ability when I got hired at IROC to work with Roger Penske, Jay Signori. That really stepped up. Met a lot of great people in my short track racing career. Some of the people that I grew up with at Wall Stadium and places like that. Oh, those people a great deal. But really, the big change in direction, the big step for me is when I got hired, and again was very, very lucky to be able to work with Jay Signori, Roger Penske, all the drivers, the George Fulmer and Dave Marcus, and all the people behind the scenes at IROC that taught me so much. And then on top of that, getting the feedback from guys like AJ Foyt and Mario Andretti and the Unsers and Earnhardt and Petty, and on and on and on. That was an incredible opportunity.
And you mentioned with IROC, I know I'd read that you were highly touted by all the drivers as someone that could really listen to them and have get them that technical balance that they really wanted. Where did that skill come from?
I think it has to come with respect, and I think that respect came from knowing, I was trying to drive. I wanted to become a race driver. That was my goal. So I understood a lot about what they were saying because I had been through some of it, and because we were working with so many great drivers, the ability just to listen to what they were saying and try and break it down. I think that sometimes it's hard for someone who's not driven a race car to not understand how hard it is, and they don't really listen to what the driver's saying, or they take it as a surface comment rather than digging down. And I always tried to somehow create a picture in my mind of what the driver was saying to what the car was actually doing on the racetrack, and then just tried to ask the right questions. And ultimately, the drivers that I worked with, I believed in what they were telling me, because lots of times you hear a guy go, "Oh, well, that guy doesn't know the difference between tighter or looser." That guy, and you're thinking, well, he's the only guy. He's holding the steering wheel, so you better try and fix what he's telling you now. It may not be doing this because of this, but then you need to ask the right questions. So, that because I had spent enough time in the seat to understand how hard it is, and then having the respect to listen to the guys.
And I know back in 1990s when he first started working with Jeff Gordon when he was 18 years old, how would you describe just as he was coming up, what his driving style was, what he needed to improve on? Just what was that aspect for you, watching him just initially get into stock car racing?
I always tell people, Jeff Gordon is, like if you were a music teacher that was trying to be, and you were an amateur musician looking for your big break, right? You were the guy that had spent your life doing, whatever. And then you meet this kid, he sits down in front of the piano and just blows you away. And you're like, wow, and that's the way Jeff Gordon was. Jeff Gordon, he was very much acted like a kid when I first met him, but inside the race car, he was as astute and about that world as anybody I ever met. So I knew he was somewhat of a prodigy. I knew that right away. When he talked to me about the race car, there's certain things that there's no way that somebody that's that young without the years and years of experience could just be picking up those things without natural ability. So Jeff, and to this day, and I say this, Jeff he's great driving ability, but he has a very, very high racing IQ. He really understands what it takes to go around a racetrack. And more importantly, he understands what it takes to navigate a whole race, to win, to put a thought process together to win an event. And that's what always amazed me about him.
And I'm sure you were able to learn from him, just because I know before you became full-time crew chief for him at Hendrick Motorsports, I heard that you had never been a crew chief before. What was the learning process with that?
It was crazy. We had lots of good times, unfortunately or fortunately for me, I had to watch Days of Thunder a bunch to learn how to be a crew chief. So, watching Harry Hogg crew chief, Cole Trickle was about as much experience as I had. It was hard, but yet it was fun because there were a lot of people on that 24 team that didn't have a lot of experience. So Jeff and I kind of grew together, and Jeff really supported me as I was learning, as I did him. I think we put on enough front and rear clips, from him knocking the wall down on our rookie year. We kind of worked together, but I think the hardest thing for me was really learning to understand what responsibilities I could give up and what my job as a crew chief was, and how to handle. I had to learn how to manage that race as a crew chief. And again, I was very fortunate because at that time racing was different. So a lot of guys helped me, a lot of really good crew chiefs. Like, I got advice from people like Jeff Hammond and Tony Glover and Andy Petrie, Robin Pemberton. It was just kind of a group of guys that hung out, and those guys taught me a lot.
How was driver development just since, that first time that you had crew chief Jeff Gordon? How is that, just driver development overall changed from then to now?
Well, back then we didn't have simulators, and I don't think that there were as many people targeted at becoming race drivers so early in their careers. Back then it was hey, if you were 35 to 40, you still could get a pretty good shot at running a cup deal. Heck, now if you're 25 to 30, they're thinking you're too old. So, that driver development part of bringing a guy or girl in and putting them in your car and spending the money on them and teaching them that, I don't think is really exist anymore. What's going on a lot, either people are finding money or they're bringing family money. They've got tons of experience in simulators and things like that. So they've got a pretty good race savvy, tons of experience in go-kart racing and legends cars. And you can get into late models. I mean, there's 13, 14-year-old kids winning late model and modified races now. So by the time they get up to the NASCAR deal, even though they're only 20 or 21 years old, they've got a ton of experience. But, unfortunately, I think the sport's evolving to be a lot like Formula One, where, we may not be able to get to see the best drivers. We're going to get to see the best drivers with money. And that's unfortunate, because I think there's a lot of grassroots talent out there that may not get the ability to work up some of the last guys that have been able to work up there without a lot of money, even though they had some factory support. But if you look at a guy like Kyle Larson, earned his way on talent, Christopher Bell, so you hope that that some of these guys and girls are still going to get a shot because a manufacturer sees a ability in them, or a sponsor, or whatever. Because the sport's it's getting expensive, and it's easy to understand. The owners have got to have the money to put the cars on track.
And you mentioned just with just having to have those roots, and I know a guy that comes to mind is Josh Berry, who had won the Xfinity race in Martinsville this past weekend. And I know he didn't really have those opportunities, obviously running for junior for a lot of years, like in lower, like late model, that kind of thing. But I think it's just interesting just how some guys, like, or even a William Byron, just iRacing was a big thing. And that's kind of what helped propel his career. But it's just interesting to hear as guys like a Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, whoever it may be, just how that's just varied so much over the years. But
yeah, and again, it's unfortunately, it's evolution, right? It's just as the world evolves and machines evolve and sports evolve, it's just, it's tough to get into the sport without a lot of money. I still feel if you got a lot of talent, somehow, some way, maybe the money will find you. And again, guys like William Byron, William Byron's not a gazillionaire. His families aren't gazillionaires, but he had enough talent and got out in ability, and he brought some sponsorship in and was able at least to get a start. I think, and he might have, I believe he got his start with Dale Jr. as well in Dale's late model deal. So, but a guy like Josh Berry, the cool thing about that is his name, he's very well respected. His name is very well respected. A lot of people, man, if I had the money and get that kid, maybe somebody will show up with some money. And that pure emotion that we saw the other day with him winning, from him and then from Dale Jr., those are the things I think that really interest people and interest the race fans. So if the sponsors are smart and somebody's out there and they want to market property, they look at that and think, okay, here's something that race fans will connect with. They connect with the fact that this guy has made this commitment and he appreciated the winning. And that to me, it is an important factor. Mike Joy made a comment a few weeks ago, and he was spot on about it. Like there's some people that come into this sport with, they're not as appreciative of the opportunity or what they're doing. And I think Mike's comment was, hey, this sport wasn't designed just, so that they could have a good time. There's responsibility that comes with working here. So it was great to see somebody like Josh Berry and Dale Jr. show that emotion openly.
That Mike Joy comment, I know that got a little bit of heat, but I mean, he was exactly spot on. It's just, it's gone away a lot, as you mentioned. Just, because it's like I feel like it's just fans, like you said, connect more with that emotion of like, wow, like they worked their tail off so hard just to be able to get to that moment, and they're gonna just relish in it.
And it's to me, it's an honor to be here, not a right. It's just because you have all the money in the world, that still doesn't make you a racer, right? It just makes you a driver with money. To get the title racer, there's a little bit more that comes with that. So in our world today, we have racers, and then we have drivers with money.
It's definitely hard to, you can sometimes see it more apparent than some, but just as moving on, just how would you prepare as a crew chief when you were initially starting to get into the series, and how did that kind of evolve as you kind of got more experienced?
I think the same basic things, right? The good news about automobile racing is the laws of physics don't change, and those cars still respond to the laws of physics, even though some days you don't think they do. But understanding the same things that win a race, right? You got to have a good handling car. You got to have a car that's right aerodynamically. You've got to have good fuel mileage, good strategy. You got a tire. You got to have a plan. You got to have a pit crew. So we worked on all of those things to make sure that we had all of the things that, if you will, the categories that could help you win a race. Because you had to have all those things right. Because you needed all of them to win. Only one of them could stop you. So depending on the track, was the track dominant aerodynamically, or was it dominant mechanical grip? Was it a fuel mileage strategy? How did our tires go? Pit stops, pit pick. So just about anything that could dictate an advantage or disadvantage in a race, we studied, and we didn't have all the computers and apps and programs, and a lot of that stuff was done the old-fashioned way. Tons and tons of notes and research on caution histories and percentages of this and that. So I always tell everybody, look, it's not rocket science. It's extra work. Racing is a big part mathematics and common sense.
And I know your biggest rival in the 90s, you and the 24 team, was Dale Earnhardt, the 3 in the RCR team. What was the atmosphere like at the track as you had to go through that every week, knowing that every week your main competitor was that 3 car?
Yeah, he was the main competitor, but we also had some pretty tough guys. Of course, they talked about the black 3. There was a black 2 that gave us a pretty good run for our money. Rusty was tough. Mark Martin, incredible competitor. Dale Jarrett, we Bobby Labonte, Terry Labonte, we raced with some great guys. But I look back at that and think it was an honor. It was an incredible honor to race with, to look and think that we were Dale Earnhardt's competition. Whether the greatest driver, not greatest driver, still the biggest name driver in NASCAR history, right? So now I don't mean any disrespect to Richard Petty, but we didn't get to race Richard Petty. So Richard Petty's, we didn't get to race him. So I respect what he and Dale Edmond did, but with Earnhardt, we had to race him. We had to race him hard, and he was tough, and he was tough on us some days, And I look back at that and think those were incredible times, and they were, for everything in my career, being able to say that we raced head to head with the best, and Days beat them. Those are some of the highlights, and a lot of my memories and some of the good stories I have involved Dale Earnhardt. So again, it was an honor to have raced those guys.
And during that time, was there any specific Dale Earnhardt story that sticks out in your mind? You're like, wow, that was pretty cool. He was tough, but he liked to fool around. We talked a lot. We had some hard conversations. He threatened to whoop my butt one day, and that kind of intimidated me because I was pretty sure he could do it if he wanted to. And then he laughed, So he would scare you, and then he would hug you. I think one of the stories I like to tell is, I can't remember if it was our first Bristol win. It might have been. I saw a picture the other day, but we were leading the race, and Earnhardt had wrecked, and he was trying to get laps back. And so Jeff had gotten into another car and bent the right front fender of our car, of the 24 car. And he was saying, man, I'm tight. I bent my fender, and on the radio, and he was getting upset, a little frustrated. And Dale Earnhardt was coming from the back with no nose, like it looked like a modified. And so I said to Jeff on the radio, I said, well, I know you got a bent fender and your car's not handling you, but the guy behind you is about to pass you, and he doesn't even have fenders. And Jeff was like, chong, he took off, and like, oh, wow. And I just saw a picture of the 24 and then the 3 behind it with no nose. So I think that was the day. But, you hear those legendary stories of Earnhardt, and they're true. Things like winning Bristol with no power steering, and there was a time. Honestly, he was in a Wrangler car at Talladega, and somebody lost a dry shaft, and the dry shaft hit that Wrangler car right in the windshield. I mean, bent the roll cage. It so lucky it didn't come through. Would have been terrible. But it cut his face up. When they wear open face helmets. So he pits, they're putting a windshield and everything in the car, and he's taking duct tape and just duct taping the cuts up in his face and goes back out and races. He's just, you look at the time that he was hanging out the window at Richmond, just wiping the windshield. So when you see that, he was unique. He was a different breed.
there was no one like him before him, and there's no one like him after him.
I think that's just what made NASCAR so special. And what really made it more mainstream is just the fact that you had those personalities of guys that you're pretty much a badass in a way. And, it's just such a cool experience just for fans to be like, wow, like that guy, he's just a legend and, in his own right, because he's himself.
Yeah, and that is what I hope that we can have people see again with the SRX series. Because a lot of people look at Jeff Gordon and, he was sneakers and, he wasn't Wrangler jeans and he wasn't cowboy hats. He wasn't a black car. He was, as I said, sneakers, shorts, and a rainbow car. And, and people assume that he was soft. And I tell people that when they say, what, tell us something about Jeff Gordon that we don't know. You have no idea how tough that guy was. That commitment that we're talking about again. I can remember, being in August at Darlington for the Southern 500. It's 100 and some degrees out. He's throwing up in the car and just pouring water on himself and still goes out and wins a race. Coming in at Watkins Glen where his glove ripped apart and skin hanging off his hand from shifting the car. He had an issue with his back. As we finish in the 95 season trying to win championship and everything, and he's just in such pain and just getting and getting it done and never complain. And I'm thinking to myself, this is what this commitment's about. His responsibility, his desire to win, but his responsibility to not let the team down. Jeff was as much of the team leader or more of the team leader than I was, but quietly. And not a lot of people know that. But just with the example he set.
And it's one of the craziest moments I know in that 24 car when you were crew chiefing was that 1997 All-Star race with the TRex car. How did that car come to be, and just what made it just so special?
The urban legend for that car gets much bigger than had grown faster than the actual speed of the car. But as I said, that was Mr. Hendrick's idea. He told everybody to get together, give all of their ideas for a new car to Rex Stump, our engineer, another brilliant guy, Gary Aker, a brilliant aero guy. We had just great people. They built that car, and it was just different. It was just different. It just didn't work that good when we tried to set it up like the other cars. Had a little bit different aerodynamic body packet. It was just different. So we kept screwing around with it. And then finally at Charlotte, we hit on some things that were very different setup wise and didn't know if it was going to work or not. So we said it picked up a lot of speed. So we decided to try it for the Winston. And, again, people go, oh, they won all three segments. We didn't. We didn't win all three segments. We won all three segments in 95, I think, with another car. But the car was just fast in certain situations. And that day, I always say, if anybody else would have been driving that car, TRex would still be legal. But Jeff just was like, that was when he was on his game, and he was going to see how fast that thing went. So truth is, with that 10-lap shootout, he ran laps that were almost a second per lap faster than the second place car. So that was kind of the end of TRex. By the time we got back from victory lane, the other owners were lined up at the trailer. And as I said, the car wasn't, it had a lot of great ideas in it, but it wasn't something that was going to really make the sport or make everybody sell their cars and build new cars and all those things. But again, the perception was that it was. So it was legendary. I had to make the phone call to Mr. Hendrick and tell him that they were about to outlaw his car. So it was an interesting night.
So there wasn't anything technically illegal with that car, right?
Not at all. That car was built by all the rules, and NASCAR had seen it and inspected it. It was kind of funny because I said to Mr. France, I said, the car is legal. And he said, it won't be tomorrow. So they rewrote the rule book.
I'd say that has to be a really great accomplishment to have on your resume. You basically changed the rule book.
Straight up, and this is something that your audience and younger people, everybody needs to know. The greatest accomplishments that I have in my career have been just being part of a great team at the right time, right? That's the key. I get a lot of credit for stuff, but the point is, being with the right team at the right time has been the key for me.
And you mentioned just with your team overall, I read that you almost like revolutionized how a pit stop is made. What went into just creating like a pit stop that was more just efficient overall?
Well, and again, I get a lot of credit for that, and I'm proud of it. But all I did was take somebody else's idea and improve on it, which is the evolution of mechanics. Or that's just the way it is. The Wood brothers really are the guys that should get credit for the modern day pit stop, without a doubt. Their thought process and the things they did. So all I did when I got into the sport was think, man, how can you, everybody was doing their choreography and they had the fast guns and making the jacks faster and all that, but they didn't work on the people, because the people who were doing the pit stops were the same people that were working on the cars back then, 16, 18 hours a day. And everybody's like, what? You think we didn't go in at 8 to 5, like most race teams were understaffed. There were 13 people when we started that race team. Now they got 60, and people are like, oh, well, you were working hard. Oh, really? How about, would you like to drive the van, go here, do this? So I thought, how can I expect these guys to perform on Sunday when they're just, you go to a place like Bristol, right, where you're working on the car all day in 90-degree, 100-degree heat, and then you're going to be a pit crew member, Bristol, on Saturday night. So we tried to bring in part-time people who necessarily weren't mechanically inclined or experienced, but they were more on the athletic area, and decided to work on the people. We decided to specifically work on the people and then work on the equipment too. And as I said, I don't think it was a revolutionary idea. The Wood brothers really, they're the father of the modern day pit stop. Alan Kowicki was into the training people. I mean, he had started it. So, and I got to spend some time there. So, all I did really was take other people's ideas and make it work.
I know, and especially now today, it's more, you see a lot of former football players, or just all these guys that are just so just trained just to be able to do that specific job. And I think, it's crazy to me just how that's evolved over the years.
Well, it's just like the Olympics, right? Every year people run farther, they jump higher, they do things better. It's the same stuff. The difference is the human development. And you look at the pit stop, same way. All of the speed, all of the gain in the pit stop comes from the human element.
And you won 3 championships, 47 wins with Gordon in the Rainbow Warriors car. After 1999, you left the team to start Evernham Motorsports and Dodge, bringing them back. Just what was your decision in just leaving the team after having that much success?
Wanted to really just, we'd won everything you could win 2 or 3 times, some of it 4 or 5 times. And, that opportunity came up. Jeff had grown. We'd been together for a long time. He didn't need a crew chief like me. And Rick Hendrick, his organization had grown. I had an opportunity to start from scratch to see if I could do it. I got the ability to help develop a motor, build a car from scratch, start teams. It was a challenge. It challenged all of my skills. It was very financially rewarding. And in the end, you've got to sometimes just trust your gut to go in a different direction. One of the hardest decisions I've ever made in my life was to leave Hendrick. Could have been there still, could have, but the good news is that Jeff Gordon and Rick Hendrick and many of the Rainbow Warriors and I are still as close as the day that, we started, or the day we won that first championship. And in life, sometimes you go in a different direction and people grow. People always say, well, you and Jeff could have done this. You and Jeff could, well, who knows? Maybe not. As I said, the key thing is, I think I grew by going my path. He grew by going his path. Mr. Hendrick has certainly done a pretty darn good job with Hendrick Motorsports. And we're all very good friends still to this day.
And you mentioned just with challenging yourself to go and create your own team, and just what were specifically type of challenges that come with bringing back a manufacturer that hasn't been in the sport since 1985.
A lot of educational process. Anybody can tell you that working with a manufacturer that or working with people in the manufacturer that don't really have a concept on how auto racing works. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but it takes some time to get experience to get around it, to understand that, it'd be like if I just jumped into putting cars on assembly line. I think I know, but they always say, you're the most dangerous when you don't know how much you don't know. And a lot of people coming in for the first time really don't know how much they don't know. So sometimes people that are making very important decisions on budgeting and direction don't really understand the process. I was fortunate that Dodge had some really good people early, that put the program together at the time that I was hired. And our first couple of years were under Dieter Zetsche, and that name may ring a bell because he also started the Mercedes Formula One team. Got a little guy driving for him there at Lewis Hamilton. You might have heard of him. So Dieter very much understood racing, and then as things started to change, and again, our program wasn't as successful. Helped a lot when Roger Penske and Chip Ganassi, got together, there. But the biggest challenge that you fight are the changes that come from above you that supply the funding.
I'm sure it helped having one of the greatest drivers of all time, and Bill Elliott, coming over to join the team as well.
Bill is just an amazing person. He obviously great driver. I always tell people the difference between Jeff Gordon and Bill Elliott, both extremely talented drivers, tremendous feedback. You could lay a quarter out on the Daytona Speedway and tell them, I put a quarter out there. Both of those guys could find it and hit it, run it over. Bill Elliott could tell you if it was heads or tails. Now, Jeff would stop and pick it up, put it in his pocket, and reinvest it in the stock market and make $1 million, right? That's the kind of luck that Jeff has. But both those guys were incredible like that. But Bill's detail about motors and gears and things like that, pretty incredible.
And with Bill, obviously now he'll be over at the SRX. Speaking of the SRX, so how did that idea initially come about?
It's really IROC 2.0. You're taking superstars, and they did superstars competition with football guys and golfers and basketball players. It's something that's been around for a while, right? Taking the best, competing against, just find out who is the best, whether it's throwing a football or hitting a hockey puck or whatever. So it's not a new idea, but the way we're going to do it is a little bit different because we've got our superstars, our 10 superstars, and we're going to bring in a current ringer from another series to see if he can beat, it may be a current Cup guy or a current IndyCar guy, a current road race guy. And then we're also going to have our grassroots all-stars, like modified champions and sprint car guys to race against it. I wanted to call it the Rocky Balboa team, but I'm not sure that Sylvester Stallone will let us do that. But I don't know if you know him, call him up and ask him if I can use that or not. But I just think that there's a lot of really great racers out there. It just reminded me of that Rocky Balboa, a guy you never heard of nationally, but locally, here he comes, and man, he puts the champions on their butt. And that's what, so when I look at this series, this is really about entertaining the race fan. The competition is going to be very legitimate. It's going to be tough. It's going to be whatever, but we are going to work hard to introduce the personalities of the drivers to the fans.
And just what all went into designing the car, and just how much input did you have from the drivers themselves?
I've had a lot of input. I mean, I'm a part owner in the series, so I have a lot of the technical and creative input. My partners, George Pine, Sandy Montag, and Tony Stewart, have left a lot of that up to me. I worked closely with Tony Uri and the people over at Fury Race Cars. Really everything that we have is based off of stuff that they were already doing. We put together some of those ideas and made the SRX car out of it. I drew the original body design up, but Kerry Hitt and his people at Advanced Composites did the finish work on it. And so it's a very unique looking car. It will have an Elmore engine in it. Again, I think that's probably about the finest name in engine building. And so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel with the car. We don't want the car's cool, and it's cool. It's my baby, right? But I don't want the focus to be on the car as much as I do on the drivers.
And just what all went into figuring out the driver lineup, just the 10 drivers you mentioned that are going to be running full time?
I wanted to get very, very well known names, superstar drivers, if you will, that were still somewhat active. And when I look down the list, I know that, Bill runs because unfortunately I have to race against him once in a while on road course stuff. Tony's very active. Bobby Labonte, active. Michael Waltrip, active. Marco Andretti, active. Paul Tracy is as active as anybody as I know. He said he's not lifting weights. He's racing boats or racing cars or racing dune buggies or something. Obviously Tony Kanaan, Elio Castronetto, still active, but they're not full time, so they could take, and be part of our event. Willie T. Ribbs, still active. He won the Vintage Road Race Championship last year. Ernie Francis, reigning Formula One champion. So wanted guys that could make the races, but were superstars and that had a story, and a lot of people don't really know the story of guys like Willie T. Ribbs. Willie T. Ribbs may well have been one of the world's best drivers in the 80s. But again, because timing wasn't right with diversity and issues, and auto racing was very hard for a person of color to break into at that time. And Willie was outspoken. A great story, and as I said, you look at Michael Waltrip, both those guys got documentaries out about them. Michael's blinking an eye, Willie's up. You look at that story, and then, some of our other guys, it's not always about their successes. It's about a lot of these guys have had hit parts in their life where things haven't gone well for them, and they fought through it. And to me, those are the things that will make them the heroes to our fans. And then they'll put on a hell of a show because they're all still pretty competitive. We're going to have to order some extra body parts. Ken Schrader said the biggest thing he's worried about is them tearing up the race cars. So Kenny Schrader and David Stremme are our two test drivers, and they're doing a great job too.
And I'd have spoken to Boris Said, who, you had him on your team for a couple of seasons in like the Nationwide series at the time. He had said he'd be all for racing in it. I remember that. Is there any chance we see Boris?
Absolutely. We're going to, our goal is to do 2 dirt ovals, 2 paved ovals, and 2 road races. We weren't able to get the road race stuff in this year. Really feel very good about getting the 2 road races in for next year. That's the way this car was designed. Okay. So I promise you that if we get that done, you will see Boris in the thing, because to me, and Boris has the credentials as a superstar road racer, but I don't know many people with as much personality as Boris.
That's an understatement. But just if you're trying to persuade fans, whether they're just coming from watching stick and ball sports, or they're watching NASCAR, IndyCar, F1, whatever it may be, what would you say to them to help persuade them to say, hey, you should come watch the SRX?
If you really, why do you watch basketball? Why do you watch football? Why do do you watch it for the game, or do you watch it to see somebody do something that you'd like to do but can't do? And then, being able to attach to those people. And again, I'm not a huge stick and ball guy. I know I watch some of the games, but I watch some of the games because it depends on who's playing. Mm-hmm. I'm not a huge football fan, but I'm a huge Tom Brady fan because of what he accomplished and what he's able to do and the way he carries himself. And you look at people, whether it's LeBron James or Michael Jordan, or, people watch games for a specific reason. And we want to reach out to that casual fan and say, get to know these guys and you get to, and hopefully something that they've done will make you feel good, right? Because if you turn on the TV, you want to be entertained. You want to feel good. They're going to put on a heck of a show with race cars going around in a circle. But if it's just race cars going around in a circle, you can turn on TV and watch a lot of that. We want you to understand who these drivers are, and what makes them compete like they do.
I know, for instance, with, let's say, golf, Tiger Woods, I know just the ratings for a golf match just go up heavily just because the name and just the personality that he is, I think that's just a great example of just having that type of specific area.
Yeah, again, people know Tiger, and there's people that cheer against him and people that cheer for him, and that's just that. That comes with being an athlete, and we're going to have that too. There's guys that are there's people who are going to love some of our guys, and they're going to hate some of our guys. But you know what? They're going to turn on the TV either to love them or hate them, and that's what we want.
At the end of the day, they're going to see a show no matter what, especially some of the personalities that the series has.
Yeah. I mean, how many times I hear people say, "Man, I hate that guy, but God, he's good."
Heard that a lot with Kyle Busch recently.
Kyle's a great one, and again, hopefully we can get him in an SRX car.
That would be incredible to say the least. Just final two questions. If you were inducted, I know we're not if you were inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame 2018, just how special is that for you and just your family overall to officially say I did all this with all the people around me?
That's the biggest award that you can get at the end of your career, bar none, because it's a accumulation of everything you've done in your career to get to a point and to be recognized by NASCAR, and my NASCAR competitors and friends and fans and NASCAR media. There is no greater honor for someone who's involved in a sport than to be honored by being included in their Hall of Fame. Whether it's the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball. To me, that if I'd have walked out the front door of the Hall of Fame and got run over by a bus, it was okay, because NASCAR. I've been a member of NASCAR since, boy, this don't laugh now, but 1978, I believe. So for all of the years and all of the things that we go through, to be honored in what is still such a small group is the biggest honor that I've ever had.
And I know one of your biggest passions is restoring cars with Big Iron Garage. Just what all goes into restoring a car and just finding the pieces to be able to put it all together and make a masterpiece out of it?
I like restoring vintage race cars. So, the street cars are okay. They're fun, but to me, I like doing the research and talking to the people and finding the original parts of the cars and how many original parts of race cars are still around. So, we just did this, the DC-93, the Dodge Daytona, that Buddy Baker broke the world record at 200 miles per hour. And that's been it's been over a 2-year project on that car. And it's been incredible. We've restored, a lot of other race cars here. But the path of finding the parts and the people that you meet and talk to along the way, and really the incredible story of where these cars have been and what they've done, to me, that's the most fun. Very time consuming and sometimes pretty frustrating, but still a lot of fun.
And that's all the questions I have. Ray, I appreciate all of your time today. And if you are looking for someone to do some content for the SRX, I'm graduating here next semester, so I'll just throw that out there.
All right, well, good luck. Come out and see us. Come out and see us at a race.
Definitely will. Good luck with the SRX and continue to get that off the ground running. And you have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Behind the Catch Fence with special guest Ray Evernham. Ray's incredible story of how he got to be Jeff Gordon's crew chief, along with his bold move to leave Hendrick Motorsports and bring Dodge back to NASCAR, were just so fascinating to hear about. Ray is one of the smartest people in motorsports, and to be able just to listen to him tell countless stories of pure innovation was a joy. I wish him and the entire SRX staff nothing but the best as they embark on a fun and thrilling series debut starting in June. We will definitely be watching. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can guarantee you that it's going to be an instant success, and I'm beyond excited to watch it grow. I'd like to thank Deck Cullum and Christy Staborski for making this all possible. I'd also like to thank Ray once again for coming on to the podcast. We're just about out of time for today's episode, so look out for more interviews and content over the next couple weeks. Before I go, make sure to follow this podcast on Twitter and Instagram @BehindCatch. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you guys later.